The choices we make to have a more peaceful life don't always lead us to peace. Nathan and his family were looking for peace when they moved to Mansfield, a small town on the outskirts of Dallas. But what they didn't know is that something dark lurked in the shadows of that place, something that wouldn't let them escape easily. In this story, you will discover how a seemingly simple change can turn into a true nightmare. And not everyone will survive. Welcome to the channel where every ride could be your last. Here, we tell the darkest and most disturbing stories of drivers and passengers who have faced the unexplainable on the roads. If you like feeling that chill down your spine, subscribe now, hit the bell so you don't miss any chilling stories, and share them with your brave friends. Get ready, because the next race could be yours. The move to tranquility from Mansfield. Nathan always dreamed of a peaceful life, away from the urban chaos. After years living in Dallas, where he worked as a wildlife biologist, he and his wife, Rachel, finally decided it was time to move. With 3 young children, Logan, Mia, and youngest Ethan, the town was becoming too small, too noisy, and too stressful. The children needed space to play, and Rachel wanted more time in nature. That's when they found a perfect home in Mansfield, a small town about 20 minutes outside of Dallas. The house was striking, with a huge backyard surrounded by dense forest. The place offered exactly what they were looking for: peace, silence, and a connection to nature that Nathan valued so much. It was on a walk that he found something he couldn't ignore. While exploring a denser area of the forest with Logan, the two found deep marks on some trees. They were long and deep, as if something great and terrible had passed through there. Nathan examined the marks carefully, but was unable to identify the animal responsible. There was something unsettling about the scene, but he didn't want to scare Logan, so he kept his worries to himself. That night, Nathan could barely sleep. Something was wrong, he could feel it. But he didn't want to alarm his family. Rachel was finally adjusting to her new life, and the kids were happy. He declared himself in the middle of the night and went to the balcony. The night air was freezing cold, and the forest was eerily silent. There were no children of animals, nor the rustling of leaves. Just an oppressive silence. As he watched the forest along, something moved. A vague figure among the trees, tall and thin, quickly disappearing into the darkness. Nathan opened his eyes, trying to focus, but he couldn't see anything else. "I must be seeing things," he muttered to himself. Still, the feeling of being watched didn't leave him. From the beginning, the move seemed ideal. The children loved the open space, and Nathan spent hours walking through the forest, exploring the local fauna and flora. He used to take Logan and Mia on his walks, while Ethan, still little, stayed at home with Rachel. For Nathan, this was paradise. But soon, that sense of tranquility would begin to crumble. A few weeks after the move, Nathan started to notice something strange. During his walks, he noticed a growing feeling of being watched. He was a man who spent his life outdoors, so he knew how to differentiate the feeling of being in a normal forest from that of being watched. But at first, he ignored the feeling. Just my imagination, I thought. Over the next few days, things started to get worse. Nathan found more marks on the trees, this time closer to home. He felt the instinct to protect his family rise within him. And it didn't take long for Rachel to start noticing too. One night, while putting the children to bed, Rachel heard a strange sound coming from outside. It was a low sound, almost like a suggestion, but she couldn't identify its source. When he went to the window to check, he saw nothing. She asked Nathan, who, although worried, didn't want to cause panic. But he knew something was wrong. At night, Nathan set up cameras around the house, hoping to capture anything strange that might be happening that night. He knew something, or someone, was getting closer and closer, and the marks on the trees were just the beginning. The first few days with the cameras passed without any major incidents. However, one particularly cold night, around 3 in the morning, Nathan was woken by a movement alarm in the chambers. He spoke quickly, ran to the monitor, and what he saw made his blood run cold. On the screen, a hooded figure, tall and thin, walked slowly along the forest line, just a few meters from the house. He ran to the porch, but when he looked into the forest, he saw nothing. The figure disappears. He went back inside, locked the doors, and got the cameras again. Nothing. "This can't be happening," he muttered, trying to control his rising panic. The next morning, Nathan decided not to tell Rachel anything, but he knew his family's safety was at stake. He armed himself with a stick and spent the whole day nervous, waiting for the figure to return. But what happened that night was much worse than he imagined. Around midnight, the lights in the house began to flicker. Rachel and the kids were already asleep, but Nathan felt himself changing. It was as if the house itself was being suffocated by an invisible presence. The sound of footsteps echoed outside, getting louder and louder. Suddenly I heard a scream. It was Logan, shouting from the bedroom. Nathan ran over and found his son standing on the bed, pointing to a window. "Dad, there's someone out there," relevant Logan panicked. When Nathan looked out the window, he saw the same figure, standing still, looking directly into the room. He grabbed Logan, locked the window, and ran downstairs to wake Rachel and the others. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice shaking. But before I could act, I heard the sound of something, or someone, hitting the walls of the house. Nathan ran to the front door, but when he opened it, he froze. On the porch floor was one of his neighbors, Mr. Jenkins, covered in blood. His clothes were torn, and his face was distorted in pain. He could barely speak, but he whispered, "He is coming." Before Nathan could respond, Mr. Jenkins took his last breath. Nathan, in shock, brought the body inside and locked the door. "We are in danger," he said to Rachel. She, pale with fear, hugged the children while Nathan desperately tried to think of a way to get out of there. The figure outside was not human. He knew that now. Nathan knew there wasn't much time. The figure, or whatever it was hunting them. He got his family out of there as quickly as possible. He grabbed the car keys and told Rachel to get the kids ready. "Let's go out through the garage," he said, trying to hide his panic. But as they were tidying up, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed around the house again. The walls were shaking slightly, and the windows were beginning to creak. "He's trying to get in," thought Nathan, looking at the locked doors. Suddenly, the lights flickered again and went out completely. The house was plunged into total darkness. Rachel began to cry silently, hugging Ethan tightly, while Logan and Mia tried to remain calm. Nathan turned on a flashlight and led them to the garage. But when he got to the car, something seemed wrong. The garage door was open, and the car had been completely destroyed. The hood was dented, as if something had been hit hard on it, and the windows were broken. "No, how did that happen?" Nathan whispered in disbelief. He knew the only way to get out of there was on foot. But the forest around the house seemed more threatening than ever. They went out the back door and started running down the path that led to the main road. Nathan's flashlight only illuminated a few meters ahead, and the feeling of being followed was unbearable. Then it happened. Suddenly, something moved in the shadows, too fast to be seen clearly. Nathan heard a scream. He turned and saw Rachel on the ground, fighting the shadowy figure that was chasing them. She screamed for help, but Nathan knew there was no time. He ran towards her, but before he could get there, the figure disappeared into the darkness, taking Rachel with him. Nathan, now in complete panic, grabbed the children and continued running. His thoughts were in disarray. How did this happen? How can I protect my children, he thought, but he had no answers. Finally, they reached the main road. In the distance, the lights of a car approached. Nathan, exhausted and without strength, waved desperately, asking for help. The car stopped, and a man got out. What happened? He asked, worried. Nathan, in tears, could only say, "Please get us out of here." But as they got into the car, Nathan looked back at the forest. Between the trees, he saw the figure again. She watched them, motionless, waiting. He knew that, although they had escaped that night, the terror was far from over. Did you like this story? Do you have something incredible to share? If you or someone you know has had a hair-raising experience in traffic, whether as a driver or passenger, send your story. Who knows, it might appear in our next video. Send your report in the comments or by email, and let's explore the mysteries of the road together.